So we have had nearly 100 Best Picture lineups at the Academy Awards. Which 10 do I think are the best? Hi, it's Brian. Welcome to the Awards Contender, and this is going to be a fun video. I'm not giving you my favorite Best Picture Oscar wins. I'm giving you my favorite Best Picture lineups. Like whether it's 5 movies or 8 or 10 or whatever, like going all the way back to the beginning of the Academy Awards. What were some really stunning Best Picture lineups at the Oscars? Let's start with a very recent one, 2022. My number 10 choice is a very recent year. 2022 is pretty spectacular. That year we had Everything Everywhere All at Once, the winner, and All Quiet on the Western Front, Avatar, The Way of Water, The Banshees of Inisherin, Elvis, The Fabelmans, Tar, Top Gun Maverick, Triangle of Sadness, and Women Talking. So my rule is, like, to make this list, there can't be a total dud. There can't be a movie I don't like. So like there were at least 5 Best Picture lineups that were almost perfect, that were freaking fantastic. Like 1967, 4 great movies there, but then you also have Dr. Dolittle, so no. 1973, I love 4 of those films, but then you have A Touch of Class. And, you know, that movie's okay, but I'm like, no, especially when there's only 5 nominees. Like, I have to at least very much like, if not love, all 5 films. So when you have 10 films, I can go a little bit easier. I thought about 2023, but we had Maestro. So I'm like, no, I actually think 2022 was a better lineup than 2023. There isn't a dud in the bunch here. I mean, there's a couple films I don't love. Elvis was good, not great. Triangle of Sadness I liked. I didn't think it was amazing or anything. But yeah, this is a pretty stellar lineup of big studio films, independent movies, films that got into a bunch of categories, films like Women Talking that only got into 2, and 1 Best Adapted Screenplay. But like Tar was my favorite film of that year, and that's in the list. You have Top Gun Maverick, which brought everyone back to the theater. So yeah, this is a really great lineup. I think in modern times, like in the last 10 years, 2022, I do believe, is the finest Best Picture lineup we've had. Number 9, 1940. Yep, let's go all the way back to 1940, where we have some truly fantastic Best Picture nominees. They are Rebecca, which won. You have All This in Heaven 2, Foreign Correspondent, The Grapes of Wrath, The Great Dictator, Kitty Foyle, The Letter, The Long Voyage Home, Our Town, and The Philadelphia Story. I feel like there might be other years around this era that people might point to, but 1940 is rock solid. There is not a terrible movie there. I mean, some are better than others, like The Letter, Our Town, you know, those are further down the list. But like you have Rebecca by Alfred Hitchcock, one of my favorite Hitchcock films. Another underrated Hitchcock film is in the list, Foreign Correspondent. That's really cool. You have The Grapes of Wrath. I mean, that's one of the best films of the early 40s, to be sure. The Great Dictator, Charlie Chaplin, like that's a classic. And The Philadelphia Story. The Philadelphia Story is freaking great. So while it's not like every single movie here is a gem necessarily, like, you know, a classic in every sense of the word, I would say at least 7 of these are pretty close to perfection, like great Best Picture nominees. And then the other ones are solid. So yeah, I think 1940 is a great Best Picture lineup at the Oscars. Number 8, 1976. So now we move into some years where it's only 5 films in the category. And man, I go back and forth on that. Sometimes I'm like, you know, I miss the days when it was only 5. Like there's no playing around. There's no like, oh, let's pad out the Best Picture lineup and like, what do we put in slot 9, slot 10? Like, no, it's like, what are the 5 best films of the year? Although the Academy often makes mistakes here. They often have 4 really good films, and then they put in like a random, like one-off movie for that final slot. You're like, what? Really? Like out of that entire year of cinema, like that movie got into picture? It happens all the time. Sometimes it even wins if you go back to the 1950s. Like, holy cow. But yeah, the 70s, what a decade for movies, and this decade shows up 3 times on my list. I do adore the year in film that was 1976, and that's a great Best Picture lineup. You have Rocky, the winner, alongside All the President's Men, Bound for Glory, Network, and Taxi Driver. Wow. Like that's a pretty stellar lineup. I would say like at the top are All the President's Men, Network, and Taxi Driver. 3 of the very best films of the 70s. Like just having those 3 there, I was like, I kind of have to put this one on the list. 1976 is pretty freaking great. Rocky, I don't love that movie. The reason this is lower on the list, I thought about putting it like number 6 or 5 or 4 or something. Rocky winning here, I'm like, the win should have gone to like Network. That should have won Best Picture. And then Bound for Glory, that's a good film. That's a movie that's not talked about very much. So there's that too. So that's why I have this a little bit lower, number 8. But yeah, that's a pretty fantastic Best Picture lineup, as is number 7, 1975. So going back 1 year, we have One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, the winner, alongside Barry Lyndon, Dog Day Afternoon, Jaws, and Nashville. Holy cow, that's even better than 76. Like, I love all 5 of those movies, and they're all very different. I feel like if you can point to 1 year at the Oscars that really represents the decade in film that was the 70s, it's 75, because you have a Stanley Kubrick movie, you have Dog Day Afternoon, Sidney Lumet, like that's a very 70s film. Nashville, like one of Robert Altman's very best. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is incredible. And then you have Jaws, which kind of jump-started the phenomenon of the summer blockbuster. So yeah, 75 is a great year for movies, and these 5 films really do represent that year really well. I wouldn't take out any of these titles. Number 6, 2006. So here's another year that has no duds. I mean, there's one film here I'm not like overly passionate about, but this is a rock solid list. You have The Departed, which is fantastic. Martin Scorsese's like one of his best movies, I would say, of the last 20 years. You have Babel, Letters from Iwo Jima, Little Miss Sunshine, and The Queen. The Queen is the one, I gave that movie a solid 7.5, maybe an 8 out of 10. That's a really good film. It's the weakest of these 5, I think. It's the most Oscar baity of the 5, but it's still a very good movie. Helen Mirren is amazing in that. And then the other 4 all made my top 10 list. They're all great. Like Letters from Iwo Jima by Clint Eastwood, one of his most interesting movies. Little Miss Sunshine, you have a comedy here, kind of an indie Sundance breakout hit. Babel is freaking great. And then The Departed winning Best Picture. I will always love that. I thought maybe it's just going to go to Martin Scorsese in directing. Picture might go to Little Miss Sunshine or something else. That The Departed won picture. I really thought that was cool. I love that movie. I was thinking about 2007, the next year, where you have No Country for Old Men and There Will Be Blood and Michael Clayton. But you also have Atonement and Juno, and I liked those movies at the time, but I don't know. I've kind of cooled on those 2 titles. And then 2008 is another great year, but you have The Reader there, and I'm not a huge fan of The Reader. So in terms of this era, the late 2000s, mid 2000s, I think 2006 is a really rock solid lineup for Best Picture at the Oscars. Number 5, we finally go into the 90s, one of my favorite decades for movies. 1993 is a pretty freaking great year for movies in general. There's so many great movies that came out that year, but at the Oscars, they got it right. Schindler's List, obviously, wins Best Picture, and then also in the lineup you have The Fugitive, In the Name of the Father, The Piano, and The Remains of the Day. There's no criticisms here. We have a big studio action film, The Fugitive, which is one of the best action movies of the decade. I love that movie. I watch it every couple years. The Piano is such a lovely piece of art, that movie. It's so great. The Remains of the Day, I finally watched for the first time about a year ago. and I really loved it. In the Name of the Father is the weak link, I would say. That's like the least of these 5 movies, but that's a really good film too. Great performance by Daniel Day-Lewis. So yeah, 93, I mean, I would have liked, like the Joy Luck Club to have gotten in here, maybe over In the Name of the Father. But that's a really great lineup for 93 at the Oscars. Number 4 goes to another year from the 90s, 1991. I thought about 94 because you have Pulp Fiction and The Shawshank Redemption. Forrest Gump, I like more than others, but then you have 4 Weddings and a Funeral and Quiz Show, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's good, but I don't think it's top 10 worthy. Much more top 10 worthy is 91, where you have just wonderful picks here. You have The Silence of the Lambs winning Best Picture. A horror film wins the Best Picture Oscar. So frickin' cool. And then you have Beauty and the Beast, a Disney animated movie, getting into Best Picture. That was the first time that it ever happened. So well deserved. That's my favorite Disney animated feature film of all time. And then you have Bugsy, JFK, and The Prince of Tides. I think JFK is a masterpiece. So great. The Prince of Tides is such compelling viewing. Great lead performance by Nick Nolte. The weakest film here is Bugsy, but it's very entertaining, very nice to look at. The performances are solid. So yeah, 91 at the Oscars. Instead of Bugsy, I think Thelma and Louise should be there. If Thelma and Louise were there over Bugsy, that might be number 1. That might be the number 1 best lineup ever. But I guess it has to settle for number 4. Number 3, we go back to the 1970s. 1972. That is a freaking great lineup of 5 films. The Godfather wins Best Picture, one of the best movies ever made. And then Cabaret almost wins Picture, you could argue, because that movie won a ton of prizes that night, including Best Actress, Best Director. Cabaret is another all-timer film from the 70s. And then you have Deliverance, which is a great frickin' movie. A great thriller, fantastic ensemble. The Emigrants was my favorite discovery from 1972. I had a podcast called Film at 50, where I was looking at films from 50 years ago, and I covered 1972. The Emigrants was my favorite discovery there. It's so long. It was 3.5 hours, something like that, and every minute was fascinating. I adore that movie. I'm so happy it got into Best Picture. I mean, Sounder could maybe go. We could put in something else there. Frenzy would have been cool. Alfred Hitchcock's Frenzy, I think, is fantastic. Or The Getaway. The Getaway would have been a cool nomination. Sounder is fine. The other 4 are amazing. So yeah, 1972 gets my number 3 slots. Number 2 is a Best Picture lineup in the modern era. I think 2010, the Academy got it right. Outside of the actual movie that won, The King's Speech is the least of these 10 movies. So, I mean, that's the only reason really 2010 is not my number 1 choice, is that The King's Speech wins. So I'm like, well, okay, you have to settle for number 2. But beyond The King's Speech, you have Black Swan, The Fighter, Inception, The Kids Are All Right, 127 Hours, The Social Network, Toy Story 3, True Grit, and Winter's Bone. That is a frickin' phenomenal Best Picture lineup. You have a mix of genres, big films, small films. You have a mix of everything that was so great in cinema in 2010. There's not 2 or 3 movies that are just padding out the top 10 list here. You have, I mean, even 127 Hours, which would be in slot 8 or 9 here maybe, it would be near the bottom with The King's Speech, is a very interesting movie. Kind of experimental by Danny Boyle. You have an indie comedy, The Kids Are All Right. You have a big studio action film, Inception, science fiction film. You have Black Swan, which is a psychological horror film, which is amazing. Social Network is one of my favorite movies, and that's here. Toy Story 3, one of the greatest animated features of all time. So yeah, 2010, I am very happy with that lineup. I always point to 2010 at the Oscars as like the pinnacle. Like this is what we want to achieve when you have 10 slots in that best picture lineup. 2010 is basically the best it's been in a long time. Like, I'm not sure if we'll ever get a best picture lineup like in the years to come quite as good as 2010. But before I give you my number one choice, let's go over some runners up. I think 1950 is fantastic because you have All About Eve and my all-time favorite film, Sunset Boulevard. But in the category is Born Yesterday and Father of the Bride, and those are comedies, and that's fine. I don't think they're like the greatest, best picture nominees ever. King Solomon's Mines, it's fine. But I feel like any best picture lineup that has All About Eve and Sunset Boulevard, like I'm in. Just those two movies allows that year to be a runner-up. In the 60s, I wanted to pick something. 1964 is pretty good. You have My Fair Lady, you have Beckett, you have Dr. Strangelove, Mary Poppins, and Zorba the Greek. I don't love all of those movies. Like the only two I really love there are Dr. Strangelove and Mary Poppins, like one of my favorite Disney movies ever. My Fair Lady is very entertaining. That's a perfectly good Best Picture win. Beckett and Zorba the Greek, those are good films. I wouldn't say they're amazing, but that's a pretty strong lineup from 64. Like in the 1960s, pretty much every year there's a movie I'm good. 64, I think that's a pretty solid year. If there's a year from the 80s I think is pretty good, it's 1982. That's the year Gandhi wins Best Picture. In that lineup, you also have E.T., Missing, Tootsie, and The Verdict. Most of the years in the 80s, there's at least one film there that I'm just like, no, Driving Miss Daisy. I'm just like, oh God. Like most of these years, there's one or two kind of duds in the category, but 82 is good. Gandhi is not my favorite movie of all time. I've talked about that before. Like I like that movie. I don't love it, but it makes sense to me why it won. E.T., like a big studio blockbuster hit being here is cool. Tootsie, a very funny comedy. The Verdict is so great. And Missing is really good too. So yeah, I like 1982. 2003, the year that The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King wins Best Picture. After that trilogy got nominated for each of its chapters over 3 years, The Return of the King finally gets that Best Picture victory for the Lord of the Rings trilogy, really. It was kind of a trophy for all three movies. Also in that Best Picture lineup, you have Lost in Translation, which is one of my all-time favorite films. It's not in my top 10, but it's definitely in the second 10. I love that movie that much. I just think it's something else. I think it's so brilliant. It's so beautiful. I'm so happy that got into Best Picture. And then you have Master and Commander, The Far Side of the World. That's an amazing movie by Peter Weir, starring Russell Crowe. Mystic River is another great Clint Eastwood movie. Like he was firing on all cylinders in the 2000s. Like Mystic River, followed by $1 Million Baby, and then those two World War II films. Like Clint Eastwood in the 2000s is doing great work. The only movie here that's like, it's good, it's not great, is Seabiscuit. We had to have kind of an audience-friendly film, I guess, in the 03 lineup. Seabiscuit is the weak link here, but it's still a very good movie. It's very entertaining. So yeah, this lineup for 03 is really great. I was looking at 2001 and 2002. I love those lineups as well, but A Beautiful Mind, 2001, that movie's okay. I don't really love that movie. And then 2002, I'm not a big fan of Gangs of New York. Like I've tried to watch that movie twice, and I don't like that movie very much. So yeah, we're going with 2003. And then finally 2009, you do have The Blind Side there. I know people will say, well, 2009 can't go in there because you have The Blind Side. I like that movie more than others. It's not a great film. I give it like a 7 out of 10. It's not the best of all time, but everything else in that lineup, The Hurt Locker wins, Avatar, District 9, and Education, Inglourious Bastards, Precious, A Serious Man, Up, and Up in the Air. The rest of those movies are fantastic. So, even more so than 2023, I think 2009 was a really good lineup, like right before 2010 and those great movies I just talked about. 2009, outside of The Blind Side, yeah, like wow. Like some really, really great films there of various different aesthetics and high budgets, low budgets, animation, science fiction. It's got everything in '09. And finally, that takes me to my number one choice. What do I think is the finest Best Picture lineup ever at the Oscars? This shouldn't have been a mystery to you. If you know your film history, you know that there's one year that's just one of the most remarkable years in cinema ever, and that's 1939. 2010 is a great Best Picture lineup, but 1939 takes the cake. This is the best one. That year, Gone with the Wind wins Best Picture, of course. Also in the category, you have Dark Victory, Goodbye Mr. Chips, Love Affair, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, Ninotchka, Of Mice and Men, Stagecoach, The Wizard of Oz, and Wuthering Heights. Like I've told people before, I've told like younger students and things, if you don't know where to begin with studying film history, I often say start in 1939 and just go down the list of Best Picture nominees and the win. For 1939, like all of these movies are great. There is not a stinker in the bunch. I guess you could point to like Goodbye Mr. Chips as being kind of sappy, Wuthering Heights, Love Affair. Maybe Love Affair isn't like the greatest movie of all time, but boy, I mean that year, at the end of that decade, the 1930s, had so many wonderful movies. And it's kind of similar to 1999, when at the end of the 90s, all of these filmmakers like took big swings and made great work, even if the Academy didn't recognize everything for 99. For 1939, it's like all of these great filmmakers came together to tell beautiful stories in a variety of genres. I mean, you have The Wizard of Oz here, one of the great movies of all time. Stagecoach, one of John Ford's very best. Of Mice and Men is fantastic. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, one of the great James Stewart performances. Dark Victory is kind of a guilty pleasure. I love that movie with Bette Davis. And you have the winner, Gone with the Wind. I know, as decades go on, there are some people who take issue with Gone with the Wind. Like there's some things about that movie that haven't aged very well. But in terms of like the quality of the filmmaking and like the epic scope, like what they were able to put in that movie in 39, get up on the screen, is pretty freaking remarkable. I love the performances, the cinematography, and I mean every 5 to 6 years, I want to say, I watch Gone with the Wind just to feel like cinema at its peak of what was able to be accomplished at the end of the 1930s. I think it's a really remarkable movie. It makes sense why it won the Oscar for Best Picture, but everything else here, everything else in that lineup is also spectacular. In nearly 100 years of the Academy Awards, there have been some amazing Best Picture lineups, but I think the number one best year ever is still 1939.